We have a very special guest now. Yaakov Katz is an Israeli-American author and journalist, senior fellow at the Jewish People's Policy Institute in Jerusalem. He has served as editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post and worked for 2 years as senior policy advisor to Naftali Bennett during his tenure as Israel's Minister of Economy and Minister of Diaspora Affairs. He's the author now of 3 books. Young man, 3 books already. Shadow Strike, Inside Israel's Secret Mission to Eliminate Syrian Nuclear Power. Weapons Wizards, How Israel Became a High-Tech Military Superpower, and Israel versus Iran, The Shadow War. And now his 4th book is While Israel Slept, which is all about October 7th. Yaakov Katz, thank you so much for joining us. Shalom. How are you?
Hey, Yishai. Great to be with you, my friend.
Sir, you've probably been very busy. You know, you just put out this book about October 7th. And yet it's like, I wanted to ask you, like, do you have to keep on writing postscript after postscript? Do you have to keep on like updating it? Because it's still happening, isn't it? It's still happening. Like, let me say it to you this way. Is the war over? Are we done with this war, or does it keep going?
I think the war is not over. I think the war has changed in its level of intensification. So we went from a high level of intensity now to a lower level of intensity. But to your question about the book, I mean, for that reason, for example, the book mostly focuses on the events prior to October 7th, right? So we did not really get much into what happened with the ground offensive. We touched upon it a bit to talk about what it was like for the IDF troops on the ground, what they encountered to try to, I would say, push back against the claims of genocide and disproportionate force that we found to be just completely fabricated and made up, as you know, and of course to talk about the tunnel systems. But besides for that, everything else is what happened in the run-up to. So we looked at the 36 hours between October 6th and October 7th. What happened? How did we get to this point that we had so much information, so much intelligence, but we didn't understand what Hamas was doing? And then we looked back in time and asked a very simple question. How did Israel, a country that is so vigilant when it comes to national security, a country that cannot be ever accused of not recognizing or being aware of military threats, not only allowed, but paid off a terrorist, genocidal, jihadist terrorist organization? How did we, the people of Israel, who know terrorism, who know enemies, how did we think that this could actually work? And that is a much deeper, a much bigger question that touches upon, I think at least, the real challenge that we face as the Israeli people when we think about how do we prevent this from happening again.
Okay, so can we delve into some of those details? Give us a little bit of a sense. Give me a little bit of a sense about how Israel, missed this thing. How did it miss it? Was it hubris? There was that about a month and a half before, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on anything. There was one of the Army intelligence officials, I think the head of Army intelligence, stated that Hamas is deterred, and they want to focus on economics, and that was
the prevailing assessment. Hamas does not want war. Yahya Sinwar wants money. He wants the Qatari cash to keep flowing. Remember, they were getting about $30 million a month that was meant to go to poor Palestinians. He wanted the workers to continue to be allowed into Israel. Let's remind our viewers and listeners that Israel was allowing in almost 20,000 Palestinians from Gaza to work inside Israel, in the kibbutzim, in the factories. And that amount of money, so think, for 20,000 people, they're getting Israeli wages for a territory like Gaza, where you have over 50% unemployment. When you have somebody who works in Israel, comes back with the money that an Israeli makes, essentially those 20,000 were actually providing for hundreds of thousands of people inside Gaza. So that was extremely significant. And the assessment was that Sinwar doesn't want war. He wants quiet. He wants the money to keep flowing. At the same time, though, above ground, we're seeing from the Tatzpitaniot, the female observer soldiers along the border, are seeing more activity close along the border. They're seeing more training. We're identifying and detecting Hamas drilling and testing out new rocket systems. We know that they're continuing to smuggle in weapons and continuing to develop newer and more sophisticated capabilities. But we say to ourselves, it's not for war. This is all meant to, flex a muscle, to pretend that they're capable and they're strong, but they really understand
saber rattling.
Exactly. It's not something that's at all in their interest. And I think that really, when you look at the situation, it's almost a case to I would say as a metaphor to what happened in Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was a classic case of where America knew that there was a war raging, and of course in Europe and also in the Pacific, but it thought it was immune to it. It thought it would never reach its shores until it exploded in 1941 on the shores of the United States. Israel, of course, knew about Hamas. We had fought a war with them almost on an average of every 2 years ever since the disengagement, the unilateral withdrawal in 2005. But we thought that that's what it was. It was these cycles. They hit us on the head. We hit them on the head. They want money. They don't really want war. And therefore, none of this could happen. So if you look at it, really, Yishai, we had the information. What we lacked was something very basic. It's called imagination. It's understanding what they could potentially do with all of this. And really what has me concerned is that I love my country, as I know you do, right? We love Israel. We want Israel to flourish. We want Israel to be safe and secure. But we have a weakness and a strength at the same time. This weakness and strength is that we view ourselves, we view our country as a Western country. Our trade, our cultural ties, all with the West, with Europe, with the United States. We want to be like America. We want to be like a country in Europe. We thought we're Luxembourg, but we forgot that our neighbors aren't Belgium and France. It's Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran off on the horizon, until recently Assad regime in Syria, and now an Al-Qaeda regime in Syria. We don't have that luxury. So while pretending to be a Western country allows us to flourish, to grow, to create the startup nation, amazing technology, etc., the problem is that we kick the can down the road. The problem is that we contain threats when we should have dealt with them much earlier. And part of also what we do in the book then is go back to the founding of Hamas and look at what signs were there along the way when this terrorist entity first got off the ground in the 1980s in Gaza. So I went and met with the commanders who were then stationed in Gaza, who knew Ismail Haniyeh, who knew Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, who knew Muhammad Def, and all these guys, because they were young students in the Islamic University of Gaza, right? How did this happen that we saw these things happening, but we felt that we had a better way to deal with it?
Did you see the reports that came out, I think today, that Hamas had been gathering tons of intel and using it very adroitly to put it together, and that they had over 3,000 intelligence officers working to piece stuff together, especially from Israeli social media, just like regular chats and social media. And they figured out that the Mark IV Merkava had a certain like secret hidden button that they knew how to now press, et cetera, et cetera. And they were trailing over 100,000 soldiers to get intel on them. They took it very seriously. They took the attack on Israel quite seriously, really had a big plan. And according to people like Yair Ansbacher, they really had a big plan. And I'm sure you talk about that as well, which is they had a big plan to destroy Israel. October 7th was not supposed to be, they may have jumped the gun, and you could comment on this, but it really wasn't just a attack and to get global sympathy, of which they did manage to do, but rather it was meant to be something much bigger. I'm just trying to get a sense of the bigness of the attack.
Well, I mean, I did see those reports saying they just came out, so that was new to me as well. But we know, and it's not a surprise. Hamas really had its pulse on the Israeli people, on the army. It was gathering intelligence. First of all, those workers that were coming into Israel were coming back with information, whether willingly or non-willingly. They were being pulled aside when going back into Gaza and interrogated and given, assignments, go collect intelligence on this. And we saw this in the kibbutzim. There were the maps that they were carrying. They knew who lived where, who had a pet, who had a dog, who had a golf cart, things like that. So we know that they had really granular intelligence on their targets. We know that the bases they were going for were not random. They knew where the communication systems were. They knew where the surveillance cameras were. They knew how to deactivate them and disable them very smartly. It was a very low-tech attack, but it was extremely, extremely sophisticated.
And I understand that the majority of the rockets, about 6,000, fell on or around Air Force bases. They wanted to neutralize the Air Force.
Right. They wanted to ground the Air Force and to bog it down. They didn't want to see an Air Force response. They also wanted to get to Air Force bases. They came with equipment and with supplies for a long stay inside Israel. They came even with, I mean, this blew my mind when I saw this. They came with amputation equipment, not to amputate Israeli who were injured, for themselves. In other words, they wanted to treat their people in the field so they could keep going. I mean, this was extremely thought through. They were prepared with lots of supplies and lots of equipment, and they were ready for the long haul. To your other part of the question, though, they had coordinated this with Iran and with Hezbollah. They jumped the gun. This is true. Sinwar got a bit ahead of himself and, wanted the glory.
Why did he do that? In order to be like, I'm the man, look at me, I'm charging ahead, I'm yelling charge. Is that it?
Look, that's definitely what it seems like. And I think that from what I've heard from the Israelis, again, take everything with a grain of salt. We now know, don't trust everything the intelligence officers and officials tell you in Israel. But they seem to come to the conclusion that what he thought is that if he starts, he is the greater fighter, the one who initiated the attack, and everyone else follows his suit. Look, it puts him at a different level. I'm higher than Nasrallah. I'm higher than the Iranians. And he thought that attack would lead everybody else to rain down their missiles on Israel. Well, we know that Hezbollah started attacking on October 8th, but they never attacked in the center of Israel, right? They kept their attacks isolated to the north. They did not expand their war against Israel to the extent that he wanted them to. And I think that came as a disappointment to Sinwar. The Iranians did not immediately get involved. That only came months later. In April was the first barrage of missiles that Iran launched at Israel, and that was in retaliation to when Israel took out Hania in Iran. But in general, there was an effort and a desire to launch a coordinated attack. And I think we have to say, really here, Baruch Hashem, right? Thank God. Because we both know that had Hezbollah been the one to attack Israel on that morning of October 7th, things would be much different, right? As bad as the situation in the south was, and it was terrible. 1,200 people killed, 251 people taken hostage, so many more wounded. Hezbollah is of a different scale. And, you saw the small number of troops that we had along the border in the south. The situation wasn't that better in the north, right? And they would have been across that border. I've heard this from not one senior officer in the IDF. They would have made it to the Kiryat in Tel Aviv, to the military headquarters in downtown Tel Aviv. If they had come across from the north, they would have been able to just drive into the heart of Tel Aviv. And I mean, we can only imagine what that would have been. So this was obviously something of a greater scale of what they wanted. I mean, obviously, and you hinted just to this, Yishai, and I think this is the most important thing that people forget about this war. Because people are always wondering, what did Sinwar want? They always talk about he wanted to torpedo the Saudi normalization. That's true. He wanted to bring the Palestinian issue back to the forefront of the world's agenda. Well, I mean, that he's been the most successful of. I mean, this is the rallying cry of every young person around the world, no matter where you go.
And I want to save that issue of the global response for later. But go ahead. I just mean to say I want to get back to. I want you to.
But I'm saying you've hit the nail on the head. Because, and people need to understand this around the world, because by supporting Hamas, by rallying for Hamas, what they have done is they handed them the victory. And this is what they wanted, right? If you're Sinwar and you come back, God forbid, he should rot in hell for eternity, but he comes back to life today and he looks out at the world. He says, 1 second, I, Hamas, am still in charge of 47% of Gaza. It's about 50% of Gaza. I'm back on the streets. I'm back in charge. No one is able to disarm me. I got the French, the British, the Australians, the Canadians, the Spanish, the Belgians. They all recognize the Palestinian state.
And they're all ripping on Israel left and
they're all
right.
ripping on Israel's isolated, right? Saudi normalization didn't happen. Not only did it not happen, the Saudis are now getting F-35s in the civilian nuclear program, and they're still not normalizing ties with Israel. Did I lose the war? I mean, no, I don't think he lost the war. But people say to me, but what do you mean? 60,000 people have been killed. And this is what they don't understand. Those people, he wants them to be killed. Right. Because that serves his interest, right? That's the job of the Palestinian people in Gaza from Sinwar's perspective.
So let me ask you a tough question. Do you think that Netanyahu is doing a disservice to us by selling to us this total Israeli victory. It's like we bopped them on the head here, we bopped them here, we bopped them here, we bopped them all around. And yet, really, there's this other perspective, which is like, no, you just mowed the lawn, but okay, but they're back. They're still in control of parts of Gaza. You did not get rid of Hamas after 2 years of war. You did not get rid of them. And also, and here's something nobody likes to say, and when I say it, I get in trouble a little bit, but I'm going to say it honestly, which is like the hostages issue. At the end, it was their script. It was the bad guys' script. You've been playing that script the whole time. Like the whole, remember that there was this, they caught some Iranian folks that were working for Iran. What's it called? People who are, what's the word I'm looking for when you.
Spies?
They were spies, but they were like, yeah, but they were not just spying. They were actually just working for the enemy. I lost the word. But in any case, you know what was, do you remember that this was reported that they found their work notebooks, what they had to do for Iran? And one of those things was put up yellow flags everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning to say, like, the hostage thing and the hostage pressure, that was partially, not partially, that was in large part the script of the bad guys. And so we got our hostages back, but at the cost of what? At the cost of the bad guys still being there. And we've returned all these murderers and terrorists back into circulation in Judea and Samaria and in Gaza. So what's the truth? What's the count? Is that like, we like, if this was a boxing match, what's the count here? It's close, right? It's a close count.
It's not, there's no knockout, that's for sure. I think that the disservice definitely was there, because when you sell to a people something,
and I asked you specifically about Netanyahu, right?
Netanyahu tried to sell the Israeli people this slogan called total victory, in Hebrew, Nitzachon Muchlat. And when I was hearing this, I was saying, look, there is no total victory here. It's just, unless you're willing to go the length of where it was obvious he was never going to go that far. And therefore, why were we selling this dream of something that is not going to happen? And then it creates an expectation that can only lead to disappointment, number one. Number two is, why not be realistic and tell the people what's really possible? What's possible here is we're going to degrade Hamas. We're going to weaken Hamas. We're going to take away their capabilities. But what we have to do is what, Clausewitz spoke about hundreds of years ago, is that military is politics by other means. In other words, you will need to have some sort of political resolution. Now, what we see in the Trump plan, Yishai, is the beginning, the contours of something of a political resolution. We might not like it. Some might like it more. It doesn't make a difference. There is a political process that is coming here. I think we could have done more earlier on to formulate what that political process was or was going to be. And I fear that we might have missed out on that opportunity. Instead, the situation right now is we're being dictated what that political process needs to look like and who is going to rule Gaza, who's going to be there. It's kind of out of our hands, when we should have been the ones who were directing what direction this was going to go.
The last week and a half, we've seen President Trump meet with Jolani, what you call the Al-Qaeda leader of Syria. We've seen him with MBS, with even a strange remark of, I don't know where that hand's been, but that's what he said to MBS, which was bewildering and rude and kind of gross and whatever. But you saw him there, and then you saw another great Muslim leader, and that's Mamdani of New York. So you saw this. And in all three cases, Trump seemed to be placating them. He certainly did not give them the what's his name from Ukraine? What's that? Zelensky, the Zelensky treatment. He didn't give them the Zelensky treatment, right? Remember the Zelensky treatment when Vance went totally, when Vance was like a angry dog barking at Zelensky in front of the cameras at the White House? Like, he not even close. They're playing basketball with Jolani. They're making locker room jokes with MBS, and there's like color guard on horses, and with Mamdani's standing over Trump, and Trump is like, yeah, you know what I mean? This guy's way more pragmatic than I thought, and it's going to be fine. I just want to make in parentheses that one could argue that the Mamdani meeting is only fair. It's only democracy. People elected him, and now Trump wants to work with him. He's a New Yorker. One could argue that. I could argue that, and at law school that would make sense. But on the other hand, we also understand that there's some serious jihad here, and that they are these strong leaders that want land, that want control, and Trump respects these kind of strong leaders. And Netanyahu in Israel, you don't get that feeling. Trump did come here. He did make beautiful speeches. He did call him a great wartime prime minister, wartime leader. But then J.D. Vance came and he was ripping us on that tarmac. I'll never forget that. That was so incredibly rude. He was just like mocking our democracy. Bottom line is, this is my point. There's some strong jihadi players. They're being respected. There's Israel with its kind of not as assertive kind of voice, and it's being mocked. Am I exaggerating?
I'll tell you something, and I've been spending a lot of time in the U.S. now, definitely around the book, meeting with a lot of different people, also in Washington and elsewhere in the media, and just leaders in society. I am concerned that the perception of Israel today is that we have moved from being viewed as an asset, as a strategic asset and a strategic partner, to being something more of a liability. And I think that Donald Trump's immediate instinct and inclination is to be supportive and to stand with us, because he can clearly see the difference between good and evil. And he knows what side we're on and what side the others are on. Right. But when it comes to that, we are needy. We're constantly in need of help. We're constantly in need of support. We're taking wars that he thought he finished, and they keep going, and we're seen as an obstacle in some cases. That's what you saw with J.D. Vance. I mean, it was very upsetting to see what happened when J.D. Vance came here. First visit of him as a vice president. He's likely to be the candidate for president in just 3 years. Good chance that he'll win. And when he leaves Israel, he's slamming us on the tarmac as he's boarding his plane to go back to Washington. I mean, he left with a bad feeling. This is not something that's good for us. And I think that this all comes down to the perception today of Israel in Washington and around the world of we've moved from being the asset or the strategic partner to being more of a liability. And as you know, Yishai, Trump likes to get, not to give.
Right.
And right now we're getting much more than we're giving, at least in the perception of it. I would argue that's not true. But
I want to ask you, and let me sharpen the question then. Let me sharpen the question. First thing that's very interesting and great, on the field analysis. How much of that perception is a created perception by foreign entities like Qatar, which today we learned in the news has put $100 billion with a B dollars into American campuses? So how much of that is perception created by Qatar, by a Tucker, a Candace, a few anti-Semites that are like feeding off this opportunity, a Fuentes, whatever it is? How much of it is actually us being that thing that you're describing, this kind of needy, a little Woody Allen-ish, a little indecisive, a little, he says, you're going to open the gates of hell on Gaza, but we're like, no, we just want the hostages. And we're a little whiny, a little, and we're of course very divided, and we have the blue side and the red side. And in America, we have the blue side and the red side. So how much is it our fault? And how much is it like a foreign, media press?
No, I hear the question. I think it's a mix. I mean, look, there is a real deep and amazingly funded campaign against Israel by the Qataris, by the Turks, by Iran. A lot of this is coming out now just today. This is no secret. The Qataris are very, very sophisticated with the way that they deliver and use their funds to be able to manipulate the hearts and minds of people. That is happening. But at the same time, and that's always going to be the case, we have to fight against that, right? We have to try to beat out that narrative. And that's always going to be an uphill battle, just simply because of resources and the numbers game. But we can do more. But I think from the general perception, and this is in the White House. Forget about the Qataris for a moment. This is when Bibi goes to meet with Trump, when he's there with his advisors against, sitting opposite from Trump and his advisors. There, the feeling is that we're always asking for things. And when you look at the dynamic with the Saudis are coming and they're saying, and you saw that in that Oval Office meeting, MBS says to Trump, no, it's not 500 billion. I'm going to bring $1 trillion to the U.S. economy. I mean, you know where I thought it really illustrated itself when when Trump goes to Doha, and the Emir of Qatar gives him the 747 Boeing jet as a new Air Force One, and then a few months later we have the 12-day war with Iran, and Bibi goes to Washington, and what does he bring Donald Trump as a gift? Mezuzah made out of shrapnel from an Iranian missile, shaped like a B-2 bomber. So the Qataris are giving Trump a Boeing 747.
A big one.
And we're bringing him
plane.
an airplane-shaped Mezuzah. And I mean, it's beautiful, and it says a lot about our values. But we're talking about someone who really does view the world in that quid pro quo prism. And I just think we're not there in the same way that they are.
I mean, there's two factors about what we're not there vis-a-vis Trump. You're saying bring him stuff. I get that a lot, but also he likes strong leaders. He likes leaders that are like, big and bold. And my contention, my constant refrain is that one of the illnesses in the Israeli psyche is that Israel doesn't want to be big. It doesn't want to be big. It always wants to be the morally right, little kind of nerdy country that can strike back if you mess with it, but it never wants to be a big ruler, a hegemon, a power. It doesn't want to. It always says the refrain, "I don't want to control other people." Where everybody around here wants to control other people, we're the only one who don't want to control. And my final proof for that is, when Israeli companies go big, their great achievement is to exit, is to sell out. There's something about Israeli mentality, which is in a small country mentality.
We don't scale. Exactly.
We don't scale. And there's excuses and there's rationales why, but like Jolani wants to scale. Who is he? But he wants to scale. And certainly Erdogan wants to scale. That's a guy that's all about scale.
Yeah.
And he has a big country and he wants it to be even bigger. And Trump is like, I like that. I even caught a glimpse of him liking Mamdani. Sure, he's taking his beloved city, turning it socialist, communist, and jihadist, but at least he's a player. You know what I mean? At least he wants to be big. So I kind of like him, and I feel like we don't do that. Did you feel uncomfortable in America? Like, did you feel like you were representing this, what did you call it? The opposite of asset,
liability.
Liability.
No, I mean, look, it depends who you're talking to. I mean, without a doubt, last week. I was actually in the U.S. and I was at the White House and had a couple meetings with some of Trump's team. There's obviously warmth and there's a lot of sympathy, but I just don't feel that it's at the level that it once was. I don't feel that it's at the same place. We're all watching, by the way. This is no secret. We're seeing what's happening in the Conservative Party. We're seeing what's happening on those extremes. Tucker Carlson with the Heritage Foundation. I mean, there's a clash right now between what they call within the MAGA movement, the MIGA movement, the Make Israel First, the Israel First group. They're against that. So these you'll hear the Steve Bannon types who I just spoke to him last week. Steve Bannon and his crew are going against like the Ted Cruz-like people because they're the Israel First group. We're all in favor of Israel, but we just don't want to see Israel put first. We have to keep America first. There's a dynamic that's there, and it's dangerous for the state of Israel. And where this goes, we still don't know. But I think we have to try to change the narrative here. Like, for example, we mentioned the 12-day war. There is a very strong group of people in the U.S., in the Republican Party, who believe that we dragged Donald Trump into the 12-day war with Iran. There was no reason that we needed to attack then in June. Iran was far away from a nuclear weapon. Why did we have to do it then? This was Israel dragging America into a war that it had no business being in. Where are we pushing back on that? How are we pushing back on that?
And the simple answer is what?
Why aren't we, or what is the response to that?
No, the simple answer, like the simple question is like, why did you drag me into this war? Why did you drag America into this war? What's your simple answer?
Oh, well, I when I'm asked that, and I was asked that last week by a couple of people, my answer is very simple. We didn't drag anyone to a war. Iran is a threat just as much as it is to Israel, is a threat to the United States. None of us want them to get nuclear weapons. They chant death to America, just like they chant death to Israel. Their ballistic missiles and their proxies and their nuclear program are just as much a threat to the United States and to the stability of this region.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. It's a simple answer.
Yeah, I know, but for some reason, we're not getting to these people right now, and we're not making these arguments in the right places. And right. I just fear that we're starting to see a shift. And Yishai, one of the issues that's coming up right now, and this is a big one, is what's going to be with military aid to Israel in the next decade. Because the current agreement of a 10-year, $3.8 billion a year is coming to an end in 2028. You need to negotiate a new agreement if there's going to be one now. Now, again, we're going back to what we spoke about before. For us to go to Donald Trump and to ask for money, to fall back into the same place that we know he doesn't like us to be. He doesn't want us to be asking for things. So can we come up with a different system that can say, no, it's not about giving us money. We're not coming as a schnorrer, as a beggar. What we're coming at is a partner. Let's do stuff together. Don't just throw money at us. Let's develop. Let's create together. We have to.
One of the easiest ways to get out of that. One of the easiest ways to get out of that is just to change the name of this. If American money still wants to flow into Israel, just change the name of it. It's not foreign aid. It's Joint Defense Development Funding. Okay, we have a joint defense development, but maybe it's not such a good idea. Maybe in this type of time where we're being accused of this kind of sucking out of money out of America, and Israel's a $500 billion economy. Why don't we just have a straight, business relationship? Why do we have to have that? Maybe we also need to loosen the bonds so that we could buy stuff from other places as well. Maybe we don't want to say to America, oh, we don't want you to sell the Saudis arms. You know what? Sell to whoever you want. We have a relationship, and you could sell to whoever you want. We could buy from whoever we want, or sell to anybody that we want. Let's loosen those very paternalistic bonds and kind of just open it up. Like, is that not a reasonable thing?
I mean, look, it's a conversation that we need to have, and I know that it's being had, and it's an important conversation and discussion because the world is changing, and I think people, and definitely Netanyahu knows this, and his team knows that to go to the United States and just expect another handout over 10 years is not where this is going. We have to change the whole paradigm. Your point of maybe we need to just say thank you, but no thank you. We'll be a customer just like everyone else is a customer. It's a valid argument. I would say there's the counter argument to that is,
I want to hear
when we continue to get aid from the U.S. as the system is right now, it connects us in a very intimate and direct way with the United States because we have to use this money in America, right? So when they give us the money, it has to be spent in America, which means pretty much you're going to get approval to buy what you want to buy in America. When you don't have that relationship and you don't have that money that has to be spent in the United States, and you're coming and asking, I want to buy now, not F-35s, I want to buy the F-47, that new fighter jet that's now just under development. It'll take years till it rolls out. You'll be coming at that like any other country that's coming to ask to buy something. It just changes the dynamic. I think there might be a middle ground. I think there's a way, for example, the F-47. I would love to see Israel involved in the development of that fighter jet. We have amazing technological capabilities. I would love to see Israel engaged, working together with the Americans on quantum computing, working with America on AI, working with America on the future of missile defense. Our laser system, Iron Beam, which is going operational, can only shoot down now short-range rockets and some slow-flying drones and mortar shells. We're going to be the first to roll out an operational solid-based laser defense system. Americans don't yet have it. Why aren't we working closer with the Americans saying, listen, let's do this together. Let's create that. What did Trump call it? The iron shield or whatever, the space system he wants to create. Let's do that together with you guys. I mean, we have what to bring to the table. That changes the whole model of this relationship. And I think it brings us back to what we were, or I think we still are, is a strategic partner that you want to be with us. You want to support Israel because when you support Israel, it helps you. And that's what we got to make sure is clear to everyone in the U.S. today.
Yeah, like you would have thought that after 2 years, we would have been seen as one of the only fighting allies out there, one of the only allies that's willing to pull the trigger, that knows how to push back on jihadism. But it looks like they made like an end run around us. It's like we did not finish the job here, and they're over there on campuses and in the media selling both that jihadism is kind of cool and that Israel is not. So we're like, it's
It's scary. It's sad and scary. Yeah.
It's really out there, and you're like, and on social media, you put out, you just, you like, if I put out a strong nationalist pro-Israel tweet or X, whatever, there's a ton of anti-Semitism that's popping out there. It's an intense business to be a Jew these days, and you don't know if you want to fly anywhere anymore. I'm supposed to fly to America also, but I'm just like, I don't know. You know what I mean? There's some discomfort about the world right now. And the state of Israel has turned into a Noah's Ark, where it's like, there's a storm out there and you just want to kind of stay inside.
And you know what? I'll tell you something else that I definitely saw really up close and felt, because I was there for a while, just on book tour, is the American Jewish community. I think it's true for all Jews around the world. They are at war too. Now, some recognize it, some don't. Some just don't want people to hate them. They refuse to recognize that. What are you going to do? You're Jewish, they hate you. That's going to be part of the nature. There's like the laws of nature. That's one of them. But that war against them, it's more metaphysical than physical. Here we're under physical assault, right? There, it's a metaphysical attack. They want to strip Jews of their Jewish identity. They don't want them to be proud Jews. They don't want them to stand with Israel. Mamdani's anti-Zionism is morphing into, is a form of anti-Semitism and will morph even to more anti-Semitism. So you might say, what do you mean I'm not anti-Semite? I'm just against Zionism, right? Bullshit. That is anti-Semitism, and it's going to bring more anti-Semitism. But it's about killing the Jewish identity. Here they want to kill us physically. Here they want to kill the Jewish identity. But it's one war and the same. And the sooner we recognize this, when we start to recognize that we're all fighting together, is the sooner we have a chance to actually defeat and win. And I think this is something that we also need to change that conversation. I don't think the Jews of America understand that they're in the same battle that we're in. I don't think that the people here in Israel fully understand that, yes, we're on the front line. We're sending our kids into Gaza. We're going into Gaza, into places. We're putting our lives on the line. Yes, it's a big sacrifice. And it's not what they have in New York, where, okay, not the same level of threat, but it's a similar war. And we have to find a way to do this together, because that's how we win.
One difference, though, between American Jewry and Israeli Jewry is that the pulsating life energy that's happening in Israel is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the greatest dissonances in this world is between the outside perception of what Israel is and the reality of Israel inside. There's such it's like when you see a fruit on a tree, when you see like a beautiful flower, it's like there's such a pulsating life force around here. The cafes are full, women are pregnant, cranes are everywhere. You just see this kind of like energy, this life energy, and it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like it's oozing out, I don't think that American Jewry is in that same atmosphere.
No, you're right. They're not, and that's the beauty of this country, and it's remarkable what we have here. It really is, the resilience and the vibrancy. And what I tell people all the time, and you just spoke about women being pregnant, people having kids. You look at the birth rate, right? Fertility rate in Israel, as we know, one of, if not the highest in the Western world, right? One of the highest, 2.9 something per Jewish woman in this country. If you weren't optimistic about life, if you didn't believe in the future, you wouldn't have kids, right? I mean, having kids is the best expression of optimism that life will be good, and you want to bring a child into this world to share that future with them and to give them that future. Israelis are an optimistic people, despite everything.
And this is an optimistic time.
It's an amazing time. It's an opportunity seizing time, what we have, because we have changed reality here. Now we have to capitalize on this change. We have to leverage the change in Gaza, the change in Lebanon, the change in Syria, the change now in Iran. There's a lot of change. Not every answer is going to be another missile. Not every answer is going to be another tank. We have to do something else. I mean, you might have different ideas than I. I'm sure you would say, for example, now's the time for the application of Israeli law in Judea and Samaria. I mean, could be that's also the moment now in time. Maybe. But I think this is where you need grand vision. This is where you need leadership that can look at everything that's happening and say, What are we going to do now that's really going to change the trajectory of our country? Because what we've gone through over the last 2 years, it can't just be another, bump along the way. This is a big moment, and
but you're saying such important things. So therefore, I want to just sharpen the question and soon let you go. I've had you on for a long time. Thank you so much for being with us, Yaakov Katz. Fabulous to have you on. I agree with everything you're saying, and yet in reality, that the thing that stymies that creative burst that you're talking about is actually our uber bureaucratic socialistic system where the government is slow, slothful, and it's filled with a kind of like bureaucracy. Getting something done is just very, very molasses like. And yes, people are having that aha moment. Young people are having the aha moment, but it seems like the upper echelon of the army is kind of like, still holding against it, and the old guard still kind of pushes back against it. And that's the frustration, isn't it? That's the frustration that like you wanna have this big aha moment called October 7th and the opportunity that it brought with it. But can we burst out of some of these very limiting factors? Also, Jewish organizations, look at all these Jewish organizations. They're bloated, I dare say corrupt. And you're just like, oh, come on. Like, we need to break out. We need to be youthful. I don't mean just necessarily young, but youthful in spirit. How do we break out of some of these things that have held us back, that have brought us to this moment of crisis, but also have this opportunity? How do we break out?
I wish I had the answer. I wish there was a magic wand.
Do you agree with me that that's a problem? Do you see that as well?
No, I totally agree with you. Look, I think one of the problems is we were, even after October 7th, which in my view, and I wrote a whole book about it, was really, I think everyone understands, was the greatest disaster for the state of Israel since inception, the day that most Jews were murdered since the Holocaust. And by the way, on a single day, and by the way, that itself is enough of a reason for us to really have to think deep what happened here, because Israel as a state, its whole raison d'etre was that days like that would never happen, and it happened. And the question is, okay, so how are we going to change? And yeah, they've gotten rid of some officers in the IDF, and we've changed some people. And even today, the chief of staff has said to some of these officers, you can't even serve in the reserves anymore. Who cares, right? There's a much deeper change that needs to happen inside Israel. We have to change the whole way we approach everything. We're still fighting about the stupid issues. I mean, I got to tell you, and you and I might not even agree on this, but I think we'll agree on the substance. There was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, all day, everyone in the media, all the newspapers are talking about who's going to investigate the military advocate general, the Patsari, right? Is it going to be the attorney general? Is it going to be the state prosecutor? Is it going to be a specially appointed judge? Is it going to be this person? And I'm looking at this, I'm like, who cares? Like, I mean, we're fighting about Narishkeit. We have such big issues to deal with. And this is what everybody is focused on. I mean, like, I'm getting phone calls from people. Who do you think is going to get the job to investigate? I'm like, do you really think that's important? I mean, yeah, it's important, but is it the biggest issue? No. And we're stuck. This is where we need vision. We need a breakout. We need change. We need change in leadership. We need change in government. We need change across the board for people to come and really take us to a new moment. And I think, by the way, Trump said to Bibi, you've been a great wartime prime minister. I think he has, by the way. But you sometimes need a change after for that rebuilding that needs to come, for that next step that we need to go to. I mean, obviously, the Israeli people will go to an election and they will make the decision for themselves. But there is something deeper here that needs to undergo a reform and a change that we're just not there yet.
Mearat Hashem, there is optimism, but there's also needs something. There needs to we have to use the momentum of October 7th to make that creative change, like you were discussing. Yaakov Katz, your latest book is called "While Israel Slept." It's there behind your left shoulder, or your right shoulder, I guess, and it's already out. Is that right? People can find it on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
While Israel Slept. That's how they find it.
That's how they find it. Exactly.
Okay. Go ahead.
While Israel Slept, you can find on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that you find books. Your local bookstore.
You are an author, a journalist, senior fellow at the Jewish People Policy Institute in Jerusalem, which is a mouthful. You've served as the editor-in-chief of J-Post, and you also were a senior policy advisor to Minister Bennett at the time when he was Minister of both Economy and Diaspora Affairs. You have other books on Iran, on Syria, on our superpower military prowess, and now on October 7th. Yaakov Katz, thank you very much for this excellent conversation.
Thank you, Yishai. Great to be with you.
All right, folks. Amazing conversation. Really a lot to think about. Yaakov Katz,